This is the T7 Pro by GameSir, their latest wired controller for Xbox and PC, which shares many of the things that made the G7 SE extremely popular, but also a few extra things that may make it worth an upgrade. It has GameSir's stick drift-free Hall effect thumbsticks, 2 programmable back buttons, dynamic backlighting, a 1000Hz polling rate, and trigger stops, which is probably the most notable upgrade from the previous T7 controllers and the G7 line of gamepads. But who exactly is this controller for? Is it worth upgrading to, or indeed picking up? Well, in today's video I aim to find out. To do this, I will be reviewing the T7 Pro in 4 main categories, talking pros and cons in each, all before giving my overall thoughts at the end. Right here, however, I will mention that this controller was sent to me for the purposes of this review, but as always, this has had no impact on the content of this video or my views expressed in it. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So for those that have been here before, you know the drill, but for those that don't, we will be reviewing the T7 Pro in 4 categories, beginning with the price, including everything we received with a purchase. Next, the design and key features, touching on the controller's main selling points. Thirdly, the customization, mentioning any options we have to set the gamepad to our preferences. And then lastly, we see how it is under use in the playtest. So how much does it cost then? Well, in the UK it will set you back around £38, the US $45, and in the EU around €60. So other than in the EU, a pretty reasonable price. And included with the purchase, we get the T7 Pro controller, a 3-meter USB Type-C cable, some stickers, a month's Game Pass code, and the instruction manual. Taking a closer look at the power cable, and similar to the one supplied with the G7 SE and HE, it's of pretty high quality, durable, and is themed to suit the rest of the gamepad. Now, if anyone would like this Xbox Game Pass code, just drop me a comment down below and I'll try and get it out to you. So if you ask me, I feel it's a pretty reasonable price point for an Xbox controller, even if it is wired only, especially when you consider some of the abilities this controller possesses. So it's a good thing that we're moving on to that section of the review, the design and key features. Beginning with the aesthetics, and I've just got to say it, this is a stunning looking gamepad. The light blue floral motif is consistent throughout the controller, contrasted with the white on the underside and on the bottom of the thumbsticks. It has a matte shell which is semi-translucent, which allows for the dynamic RGB to pop through, which is very effective and makes the gamepad stand out even more. One interesting point I noticed was that the lighting is different depending on which input you press, which is pretty cool, while it also has a slight fade effect, which is something I haven't seen before, adding again to the overall look of the controller. It also has semi-translucent bumpers, triggers, back buttons and D-pad, which also allow for the lighting to bleed through. We have texturing on the triggers, bumpers and back buttons, which is always nice to see, although personally I can hardly feel them, but it is there. We also have laser engraved grips on the sides of the controller, a step back from the rubberized side grips on the G7 HE, but it does do the intended job. There is also grips on the top of the thumbsticks, helping to keep our thumbs from slipping in them crucial moments. Getting started with the features the T7 Pro has to offer, and we have to begin with the Hall effect thumbsticks. GameSir is known for providing stick drift-free Hall effect thumbsticks, and the ones in the T7 Pro are the same sticks used on the popular G7 line of gamepads. Next we have 2 programmable back buttons. Yes, only 2, which is a main complaint I see with other GameSir controllers, but 2 is all I personally use, so all good here. Generally I bind them to A and B, allowing me to jump and crouch, all while never taking my thumbs off the sticks. Next we have something that I have always missed when using a G7 SE or HE, hair triggers. Yes, the T7 Pro has a step up on its older brothers with these hair triggers, which are implemented just by flipping this switch right here to switch from the linear Hall effect triggers to a more instant hair trigger. Now I do have some thoughts on these, so stick around to the playtest to see what I think later on. Quickly rounding out the rest of the features, and we have a 3.5mm audio jack, 4 rumble motors, membrane face buttons and a 1000Hz polling rate, so we have nobody to blame other than ourselves when we are playing competitively. So far we have a decent price. It looks fantastic and has some desirable features, but is there anything we can do to suit it to our playstyle? Well, let's move on to the customization. Starting off with any cosmetic customization, and for now, other than playing with the lighting modes, there isn't anything we can do to fiddle with the controller's looks. No swappable faceplates as seen with the G7 controllers. But Why would you want to? I mean, look at it. But what it lacks in this area, it more than makes up for it thanks to the GameSir Nexus 2 companion app, available on Xbox as well as PC. An upgraded version of the Nexus app, which takes it more in line with the GameSir Connect app used for the Cyclone 2. Here we can bind our back buttons, set dead zones on our triggers, thumbsticks and bumpers, perform updates, check calibration, customize our RGB lighting and set custom profiles. So basically fine tune the gamepad to suit us best, which is awesome and one of the main selling points in a GameSir controller. But enough with the price, design and customization. This is a games controller and you want to know how it is when gaming. Well, let's move on to the playtest. Firstly, we need to start with the general form factor and how it feels in hand. For those familiar with the G7 line of controllers, the T7 has the exact same size, shape, face button and stick layout, as well as back buttons. It is a little smaller than a standard Xbox controller, but for me, who has slightly larger than average hands, it still feels comfortable and well placed. As mentioned, this is the exact same back button layout as the G7 gamepads, which meld into the back of the controller pretty seamlessly. But I did notice some accidental button presses from time to time, in some hectic moments. But the more I used it, the less this did begin to happen. Touching on the Hall Effect thumbsticks, and I'm impressed. They do seem to be a little stubbier than they are on standard controllers, but they are smooth and thanks to the anti-friction rings, we don't get the clack when the sticks hit the edges. In game they perform well and are some of the better Hall Effect sticks I have used. These types of thumbsticks can lack a bit of precision, but when dialed in, I felt pretty confident in hitting my shots. As promised earlier, we have to talk about the triggers. And while they are perfectly fine, and once you flip them into the hair trigger setting, they do what they set out to in letting you actuate the triggers that little bit quicker, which is a must for shooters these days. But for me, they just feel okay, a little hollow and not very satisfying. The same can be said for the bumpers. They are fine, and that's probably the best I can say about them. The D-pad also falls into this category. No fuss, no frills, just a standard D-pad, which is cool with me. In game, it performed well in my playtest, and feels at home in the genres I tried it out in. But for me, shooters are definitely where it shines. The sticks, hair triggers and back buttons all contributing to a very competent controller in this regard. The 1000Hz polling rate further adds to this, giving us a smoother, more responsive experience and will no doubt help it perform competitively, if that is something that you are interested in. So after 4 review areas, what are my overall thoughts on the T7 Pro by GameSir? Aesthetically, it's stunning. The blue floral design is gorgeous, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of lighting on a controller, the implementation here certainly does add to the overall effect. It has the same feature set which saw controllers like the G7 SE and HE become go-to controllers over the last few years, while the addition of hair triggers also elevates this controller by giving us the chance to get our shots off that little bit quicker. So I am a fan of this controller, but I am left wondering, who is this actually for? Most people who would have been interested in picking up a GameSir controller for Xbox will have no doubt decided to pick up one of the G7 line of controllers. And for those who are looking for a little bit more out of their controller, like hair triggers for example, they probably would have decided to go for something like the Cyclone 2, or are holding out for the G7 Pro when it comes out next month. But with that being said, if you haven't already picked up a Hall Effect GameSir controller, and you are looking for a Pro controller which doesn't break the bank, which has some nice features like Hall Effect thumbsticks and hair triggers, and also looks the part, then you won't go far wrong with the T7 Pro. But that's just my thoughts. I would love to hear what you all think. Have you decided to pick one up, or are you waiting for the G7 Pro? Remember to let me know in the comments below. Now, it's at this point in the video where I will kindly ask you to hit that like button, and of course consider subscribing to see more controller review videos just like this one. But anyway guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll catch us.